Hello, welcome to this edition of Vince and You. In today's edition on African Free Press TV, we'll be talking about a particular topic of intense emotion, passion, sensitivity or sensibility that will actually make you feel what is going on in Nigeria. Remember, this is African Free Press TV, where we represent Africa and report Africa from a refreshing perspective. My name is O.C. Vince, and I'm your host on Vince and You for today. Now, the topic of discussion today is we are looking at the current issues surrounding domestic violence in Nigeria. Yes, domestic violence. A lot of people call it DV. So D for domestic, V for violence. Now, what is domestic violence? It's that kind of issue of violence that normally happens in a domestic environment. Call it a home. Call it in a society where a man and a woman are living as boyfriend and girlfriend. In a home where a man and a woman are living as they are cohabitating, or in an environment where a family are living, call it husband and wife. Violence is violence. Violence is just wrong. It's not tolerated. So in any society where you see most of the time there is a fight or an abuse that causes emotional abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse against one party or one other partner, mostly it's against women. It does not mean that men do not go through the issues of domestic violence. Yes, men do suffer from domestic violence also. Now, with me today to discuss this topic will be somebody who is an activist for women, for young people, and I have Amanda Chisholm at the studio today.
Thank you.
Now, thank you for coming on board to discuss. I like this setting because right now we're talking about domestic violence. It happens most of the time between a man and a woman. So until we've got a man and a woman, okay? So in your own understanding, what do you see domestic violence today in Nigeria?
Domestic violence is a prevalent issue that it seems most people don't talk about it because they have accepted it to be the norm. But it's happening and people are dying every day. And it has gotten to the extent whereby we record a case of domestic violence every week. Someone is being beaten, someone is dying because someone that she or he thought loved him or her had taken to the act of violence to correct a perceived wrong in the action of the victim, or maybe to justify his anger, or some kind of sick perversion or whatever it is that makes people become violent.
Yeah, in Nigeria today, let's go into the grassroots. We've got lots of cultural. I know domestic violence happens across the world, be in the States or be in the UK or in Asia or in Japan. It happens across the world. I must say, due to my experiences in traveling, I still know that there's a serious issue of domestic violence in Nigeria because most of the time it's not recorded. Okay? Yeah. But in other parts of the world, in some African countries, the rate of fatalities where women have been shot dead, strangled, in very civilized settings in Africa is actually very high. Or maybe it's recorded more than Nigeria. But what is the role of culture, religion, in the issue of domestic violence in Nigeria?
I'm going to be honest, religion, not as much as culture, religion has been a very big hindrance to stopping or eradicating domestic violence as a whole, because you have a case whereby a woman is abused and you go to give her the necessary help or support, even though it's not maybe a moral talk, a one-on-one talk, and she tells you her pastor said, oh, you cannot live a marriage because you are being beaten, and because someone said for better, for worse, and God hates divorce. And you find out that come back in the next 30 days, she has been beaten again and she's still going to be there because the pastor said, no, you cannot leave your marriage because God hates divorce. We are not encouraging divorce in any way, but it comes to a time whereby you have to think of yourself and the welfare of your children. We also have cases, that's where culture comes in, where people say, oh, I cannot leave this marriage because of my children. But they have not thought of the psychological effect it has on a child to see the mom being beaten every day. And in so many cases, like a case I was involved in some weeks ago, the man actually killed the woman. He was beaten and he killed her in front of his kids. Now tell me how those kids will grow up knowing that their mother died in the hands of their father. How have you helped those children? And this is a man who is basically jobless, and the woman is the breadwinner of the family. Now you kill your breadwinner and your children are going to go hungry. And these are the children you said you cannot live a marriage for. So religion, culture in some certain places, but not so much of culture, because there is no culture in the world that supports the abuse of another human being. So it's mostly a religious barrier and religious hindrances that cultivates the action of
how do we actually encourage people to speak up and speak out more? Because in most of the Nigerian cultures, you mentioned about pastors saying this and that. There could be situations in other religion where people are intimidated and suppressed, that they cannot even speak up or speak out. So they're virtually dying in silence. What method, what systems can we bring in place to encourage men or women that have been abused in domestic violence for them to speak up and speak out?
The most important thing we have to realize is this, that we do not have agencies in place to ensure this thing. We do not have therapists who would actually talk to an abused victim and say, oh, you are being abused, this is what you should do and this is not what you should do. Then again, we do not have the legal know-how to curtail this crime. So when you talk about the measures to take, first of all is to educate the woman or the victim or the male in such cases, because people do not know that male also gets abused. It's not a norm, but the abuse is also there. But most importantly, you have to realize and also tell the victim that you are a human being first and foremost. You are responsible for your own welfare, and God did not put you in the world to be abused. That's right. And nobody should abuse you. When you realize, because you have cases where a woman will say, oh, I did not cook his food on time, that's why he beat me. Maybe if I cook this food on time, he will stop beating me. Maybe if I'm doing this right or doing this wrong, he will stop beating me. But it doesn't stop, because once you give a human being that power over you, they assume power. Power is an absolute something that whenever you give it to someone is obviously going to abuse it, and people do not need power unless they are trying to abuse someone. So the first thing is to tell people that you are a human being and you should not be abused. Then actually put legal structures on ground to ensure that these abusers also know that there will be consequences for abuse. Because right now, when you report a case of domestic violence to the Nigerian police, you find out that they will say, oh, you useless woman, why did he beat you? You were talking too much. Now let go. Or they take money from the superior partner who is more richer in the case. Then you also have to know that most women that are being abused is a case of poverty. Yes, because the Nigerian woman is not empowered enough to make her own money and have a level of financial independence. So in most cases, especially in rural areas or suburbs, you find out that the women who are mostly victims of abuse are women who depend totally on their partners or their spouse for survival.
Okay, if you're just joining us, we are talking about the current status of domestic violence in Nigeria. Remember, this is Vince and You, one of our premier programs on African Free Press TV. And if you're just joining us, remember you can always like our page on Facebook, Twitter, and even our wonderful website at www.africanfreepress.com. Now, talking more about domestic violence, you see, in my research, in my experience, in my frontline work in different services, I understand that domestic violence does not narrow down to only the issue of hitting somebody. When you are living with a partner, be it your girlfriend or your boyfriend, be it your spouse, your husband or your wife, there are other avenues that one could be suffering from domestic violence. Example, when he or she is denied from the finances that he or she needs, and especially when that finance is available, All right. Say example, he works, she works. Supposed to have a joint account, and you deny one party from having access to that money. It's DV. It's abuse. When you actually use emotional things to say if she's a prayerful woman or a prayerful man, when she or he's about to pray, you switch on some music to distract the person or deny them from worshiping or praying. It's abuse. When you use emotional psychology to torment her, call her all sorts of names, oh you fat pig, oh you bungo fish, all sorts of names that will depress the person, or you man that drinks too much alcohol, or you that cannot perform well in bed. All these kind of things are part of domestic violence, and no man or woman deserve this kind of torture. Now let's come back. I don't know what your opinion in this, but I can also add this question about currently in Nigeria, the society, the police, are they empowered to actually manage this situation? Are they empowered, or just want the police to do something, but because of the lack of the skills or the training or the experts, they just say to you, you useless man, go home, or you useless woman, go home? Because do they have the training, the infrastructure to be able to support DV victims in Nigeria?
First of all, I would like to say that when it comes to abuse, there is termed psychological, mental, or physical abuse, and abuse is always constant in certain homes. That's why I say the man can be abused in most cases and the woman can be abused in most cases. In the terms of the man, so many times it turns down into mental abuse by trying to put the person down or something. But the problem we have is that the cases of abuse do not get to the legal institutions like the police and all those till it becomes a case of physical abuse. That's why so many people do not talk about the part of mental or emotional abuse. Is always a part of the physical abuse. Now when you get to the police station, the truth is that by law there are certain establishments or departments in the Nigerian police that are supposed to be handling this thing. Whether they are performing their duties well or not, in most cases, is left to be said on another day. But there are times when you take this to a desk, most especially if you are lucky and the person in charge is someone who is dedicated to duty in the welfare department of the police, the person will be committed to see to the end of the matter. But if you're unfortunate and it gets to the desk of someone who is not professionally trained or who is more money conscious and feels that he that pays the piper dictates the tune, that's when you have cases of not treating him well. The Nigerian police on its side handles these cases. People think that there are no departments for it or it ends at the counter, but there are departments for it. Now that's where public enlightenment comes in. If you are a victim of abuse or you know someone who is abused, who is the right person to report it to? You go to the welfare department of the police, you register over the counter, and they are supposed to direct you. If I register a case as an educated woman, I will personally ask for the welfare department because that's where I want to handle my case. But if you are not educated, you will think that it ends at the counter. Most times, the cases of abuse do not get to court because of our strenuous judiciary system and processes that take days, years, and all that. So people are discouraged. The law is actually not helping people. Okay. So when agencies are put on ground to ensure that if you do something, there will be consequences for certain actions, I think the rate of abuse will be stopped.
Okay, if you're just joining us, we're still talking about the issue of domestic violence in Nigeria. As we are about to conclude, one of the key points I heard you raise about is one of the reasons of the poor issues of domestic violence in Nigeria is because of, number one, the poor judiciary system. So the people in the law discipline, what are you doing? That's number one. Number two, we talked about making sure that the Nigerian police force has got the equipment and the training and the exposure to handle this. Obviously, we have to talk about the health center or the health sector, the issue of mental health. Could be an issue because a certain man may have a mental health situation. He looks okay. He dressed well in agbada or any kind of native wear. But they have got a mental problem that when you come back home from work and you're stinking, you should have your shower. Because if your woman says, sorry, you cannot touch me in the night, and bang, you start to beat her, okay? You have to make yourself presentable for her to feel comfortable. That's number one. And also, you as a married man or a married woman, when you deny your wife of sex, it's abuse also of a category, because you have a mutual agreement to be together. Or what do you think about the issue of mental health, or issue of a man saying my wife and she says no, or wife saying my husband and he says it? Is this kind of an abuse or domestic violence of its own way also? Because they're supposed to, do what they're supposed to do as married couple.
When it comes to that, in the area of marriage, I feel marriage is a partnership whereby two partners can discuss what goes and what does not go, and in the sense that nobody loses their right to say yes or no. But even at that, it doesn't call for abuse. But when it comes to the idea of the mental and the health sector and what they're doing, you find out that we are in a country where psychology is a course in school, but I think so many people read it for just reading sake, and nobody practices. I do not know up to, in fact, every person I know who read psychology in school is not practicing. But when you go abroad, you find out that you have therapists or psychiatrists or psychologists who are professionals, who are actually trained and equipped to handle the cases that comes up in marriage or any kind of relationship or any kind of mental imbalance. You find people who may be having a little problem and they say, oh, I'm going to talk to my therapist. But in Nigeria, we do not have that. So it also falls to whoever, the government or the individuals themselves, to stand up and say, oh, this is what I do, I can do this.
Yes,
but
right.
You find out here, the people who do the counseling are mostly the religious people. Not that I have anything against the religious people doing the counseling, but there is a limit to what they can do and the facts they can actually confront without being religious about it. So that's why I prefer the actions of the professionals in handling matters that comes up in marriage and all that. So the institutions are not there. When it comes to any kind of partnership, communication is major. So once there is communication, I believe so many things will be sorted out and handled amicably.
You've heard that from Amanda Chisholm. Now, as we about to round up on this edition, remember, violence is violence. No matter what she has done to you, violence is violence. No matter what he has done for you, because there are a lot of women out there that use their mouth to knock their husbands or their boyfriends to death. It's still violence against them. Even though you're not touching them, deadly words that comes out of your mouth as a nagging woman or even a talkative husband or a talkative spouse can kill somebody's morale. You understand me? So you don't need to think about, oh, I did not touch him. But you've unleashed some deadly words out of your mouth that made him to bang you. I'm not supporting any kind of violence, because we have the saying in Nigeria, it's the mouth that said what made the heart to go sour. Okay? So before the energy of the annoyance, anger is built up, mind what you do to him, mind what you do to her. But because you could be the trigger that made him to be violent. But one thing you must understand, being someone who's lived across the world, no matter what he has said to you, no matter what she has said to you, the moment you hit her, the moment you hit him, you've lost the case. This is African Free Press TV. I'm O.C. Vince. Thank you for watching this edition of Vince and You. Remember to check out our website, www.africanfreepress.com, or follow us on Twitter at africanfreepress.com, or like our Facebook page, facebook.com/africanfreepress.com. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Remember, say no to domestic violence of any type. Mind what you say. Do not trigger. And when you're triggered, once you touch her, once you hit him, you've lost the case. You should be ashamed to be part of domestic violence. Thank you. Bye-bye.